Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. This is where right and left can come to be reasonable. Now, I do have a fact that no one in power seems to want you to know. The dirty secret behind the shutdown. And I will tell you. But first, there is news to report. That's news also, but news of a different variety. Goodish news. The Trump administration says it will provide SNAP benefits, food stamps, to 42 million Americans. I knew this would happen, as I told you last week, for two reasons. One, I'm not going to play the game of brinksmanship, and if this doesn't happen, it'll be terrible, because I know when things are going to happen and when they're not. The question is when and how. The law is clear that the reserve fund that was set up for SNAP can be used in this instance. And the president, if not some of the people around him, knows that this looks terrible and punitive to the poor. And the president was right. So they made a shift. So why is it only good-ish? Well, the reserve fund for SNAP that the administration wanted to withhold is not enough for full benefits. So the only real answer to restore the benefits is to end the shutdown. But both sides believe keeping the shutdown going through elections tomorrow helps them against the other side. Again, they believe allowing the poor to suffer works for them because it will make you angry at the other side. That is proof our system is broken. Now, the other problem is there are those around the president who insist on making the poor a problem. So they won't hustle funds like they did for the military to allow the poor to eat. So they will send weird emails warning grocery stores that they can't give poor people a break if they don't have their full food stamp allotment. Why would you send that message? I don't know. But I do know the secret behind the shutdown. The poor are not the problem with our budget. And they're not what this shutdown is really about, which is the escalating cost of health care in this country for all of us. Now, why am I saying us when this is about subsidies for the ACA, for the poor, 100% of the poverty level? Well, why am I saying that's all of us? I didn't even mention the giving illegals free health care, because that's just BS. And I've said it and I'll keep saying it. Democrats should give the issue of reimbursement rates to states for emergency care that they must provide under law. Give it to the Republicans. You decide how much the states get reimbursed. You own it when states are going broke, paying for what you're supposed to help with. Democrats, give it to them. Here is what none of the players will tell you. You don't have to be on Medicaid or Medicare or the ACA to be part of the issue of government spending on health care. I get it. You're almost certainly included. I know you're not in one of those programs. You're one of the 160 million Americans who gets their insurance through their employers. I know, me too. Did you know, though, that your company gets a huge gift that the powerful don't discuss? You didn't know that, did you? Not new, not chump change. Last year, the government allowed companies to keep $384 billion non-taxed expenditures on health care. In the next decade, that number grows to $700 billion. And in terms of the value of what we give versus we let companies keep, those tax subsidies are nearly 4 times what we spend on ACA subsidies. So why are they talking about the subsidies? Because they don't want to mess with big companies. What they give big companies, look at your screen, is the 3rd largest healthcare program in the United States behind Medicare and Medicaid. I bet you didn't know that. So now we have to ask, why, despite this subsidy, are prices rocketing? 10 years ago, the average annual premium for a family's health insurance plan was about 17 grand. Workers contributed just under 5 grand. Today, same plan, 27 grand. Workers contribute nearly 7 grand, but the subsidy to the companies have gone up. Why is there a 40% increase for you out of pocket when the corporations are getting more of a subsidy? I'll tell you why. corporate influence. The people in power care more about them than they do about you. The corporations get more and get to give us less by giving more to those in power. The healthcare sector gave nearly half, well, it's really the health sector, insurance and care, nearly $500 million to both Democrats and Republicans last year. That's why I called out corporations and both parties for their pay-to-play luxury suites at the conventions, because it's the truth. They sit up on high looking down at everybody else at the convention like they think on the bottom there, those people, that it's about them. They're up in those boxes laughing because they know they are winning the game by paying for inaction against them. They are getting the benefits. Third biggest expenditure on healthcare is to rich companies. Americans, however, continue to spend twice as much per person on healthcare compared to other wealthy countries. Every year we get this, $5 trillion a year on healthcare, a fifth of the GDP. Yes, President Trump has been trying to take steps to lower drug prices, but only in terms of what the government pays to drug companies for Medicaid, Medicare, not what you and I pay. And the president can't fix that, even if he wanted to. Congress has to. The guys who are convinced that fomenting division about who's to blame for our problems is a better strategy for power retention than solving anything. They're literally not even at work. Wow. And the second reason is they don't want to piss off those guys who give them all that money. That's why they don't tell you about the subsidies to the corporations providing so many of our health care. See the game. Now, do I have it wrong? Let's talk to somebody who has been freed of partisan entanglement and the office of Senate. Was a Democrat, turned independent, has worked at every level of government. The author of a book that is so important to read if you're an independent critical thinker, Dead Center, double entendre, in defense of common sense. Former West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin joins me now. Thank you for being with me, Joe. Congratulations on the book again.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Good to be with you again. And I like your analogy, what you just opened up with, because you're right on. And that's the way it's been. Can I say one thing about the shutdown? Everything basically started, we're talking about before COVID. All of these subsidies had been increased dramatically, and so have SNAPs. SNAPs was increased too during that COVID period. And they're all trying to say, okay, Republicans want to take it back prior to COVID. Democrats want to continue it. They wanted to extend it forever. And in between, you've got to find where should we be and how can we be? But unless you fix the root of the problem, which is the quality of health care and how we're delivering it, and putting some basic guardrails, you're going to have continuing runaway cost.
If you could wave a wand, what would government be able to do to address the health care costs all across the board, not just their programs and subsidies, but what the majority of Americans pay? Because we're all getting a hit. I just got my letter.
Yeah, first of all, it's the only product in America we don't shop. You know, especially the females in America, they've got the greatest gene of all, the shopping gene. They know exactly when there's a good value, a good bargain, how to seek one out. But we don't do that. We don't question anything. All we care about is what do I owe? They don't care what you're paying. I'm insured with you. What do I got to pay? Well, let me tell you, there's no medical savings. I've always been for medical savings. You know, if I can build up a medical savings account because I'm living a healthier life, you give me discounts if I drive safe. You give me discounts if I insure my home and I have it all up to date and everything's in good shape. I get all those discounts. I get no discount to how I live my life. It makes no sense whatsoever. So the incentive, the responsibilities, we take all of that out. And then when Obamacare came along, I was a governor at that time, and I remember them trying to tell all the governors why they were doing what they were doing. And they called us on the phone, and we had a bunch of Democrat governors on, and they were saying, well, you're going to have to buy this insurance, and if you don't buy it, we'll fine you. And I told somebody, I said, that might work where you come from, but not in my state of West Virginia. You're going to force us to buy a product that we can't shop. And if we don't buy it, you're going to penalize us. So the bottom line of why Obamacare was needed, or something was needed from the federal government, Chris, if you know how people had used it before. Let's say people on the low end of the totem pole working at $35,000, $45,000, $55,000 a year. They couldn't afford to pay the co-payment, what they had to contribute, their contributing factor. They couldn't pay that, so they didn't. The only health care they had was emergency room. And then, so there's no preventive care at all. It's just emergency room. And then, if they did get hurt any way, shape, or form, and they needed more medical care, they would hobble into their work and claim workers' comp. And then if you worked hard all your life in the mine or anywhere else, Chris, then, you know, you had existing, pre-existing conditions. You couldn't even get insured. There was nobody that would insure you. So those things were taken care of. Why would you ever deny someone who worked all their life that basically had a pre-existing condition because of their work, and now you won't insure them? So some of those things were so wrong that could have been fixed.
Yeah, look, and it was good to get the pre-existing coverage, but I think that the fundamental problem, tell me if this would be legal. Mr. and Mrs. Corporation, you are not getting subsidies from the United States government to provide health benefits. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, then we won't provide them. I'm glad you put it on the table. Well, then you can't do business in America. Why don't you make it the law that they have to provide health care business if they want to be part of the American marketplace?
Yeah.
And you don't get a subsidy for it because you're making money hand over fist. Stock market is going crazy. Corporate CEO pay is nuts. Why are we giving you the third biggest subsidy in health care?
Makes no sense whatsoever. It really doesn't. And it can be revamped, but it's going to take it, like you said, if you look at the amount of money that's being spent in Washington for lobbying on health care behalf, on large health care providers, I don't know how you take that out. The big money in politics today is just eaten alive, and people are scared to death. They're afraid of getting primaried. They're afraid of big money coming against them. All these different things. I'm almost convinced, totally convinced, more so than ever before, we need term limits. And I had a lady one time, she was convincing me about 15 years ago, Joe, let me tell you, if you had term limits, maybe we get one good term out of you. Maybe we get one good term out of a senator or one good term out of a House member who says, I'm not running for re-election, so I can do the right thing now. I don't have to worry about that.
How do you do it without a constitutional amendment?
How do you do it without a constitutional amendment? They're not going to do it themselves. You know that. They won't vote for that. But I'll tell you one thing. You put the constitutional amendment on the national ballot, and I'll guarantee you, if you had 2 terms as a senator, 12 years, 6 terms as a House, that's 12 years, 1 term as president for 6 years. President should never have to run for re-election, Chris. And then 1 18-year term for the Supreme Court, and I'll guarantee you, it would get 80% of the popular vote.
That's a strong idea. What about this movement? What about a movement for people? I've been, you know how I feel about the two-party system and the grip it has on us. What if the movement is to encourage people to vote out all incumbents? Don't vote for anybody who's in office because they have clearly not done their job. Just vote for people who want to get in there.
Yeah. Just to do, you want to get something done. What's your purpose? Ask them.
Yeah.
And I tell when I speak to crowds, I say, listen, I'm telling you, please don't give a donation or contribution to a politician. Tell them you're willing to make an investment. And every good person who makes an investment, whether it's $1 or $100 or $1,000 or more, they want to return that investment. What can I expect from you? If I'm willing to make an investment in a campaign for you, what am I expecting back? What can I expect from you? I'll guarantee you most of them can't answer that question. Next, a very simple question, why are you running? Why you want the job? A lot of them can't answer that question. Some of them's fortune and fame today. Where's the public service? Where's basically, ask not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country. It's noblest of all professions. You know, public service is getting things done, getting crap done. And right today, it's almost an obstacle. And people are looking at, how can I prevent you from doing something? Because you might get credit for something good. How can I stop you?
That's right.
That's what's happening.
Opposition opposition and division has become the primary commodities. You and I talked about it for years. And your book,
Yep.
which people should read, and I'm not honking the book like Bill O'Reilly does every time he's on the show. This book is for critical thinkers who know it doesn't have to be the way it is right now. Joe lays it out for you in the book. You're always welcome here to discuss it, and I hope that we see more of you in the public space.
Well, we will. Here's the thing, and I would tell all of them, and all of you all, you should expect that the person is going to be representing you, not their party, not anything but you. You're the representative form of government. So whatever decisions are made in any elections tomorrow, we have to basically engage the process that we're going to support the person after the elected. Might not be the person you vote for, but you can't carry that animosity and hatred on after the election. We've got to get back to basically serving the people that represent the form of democracy. I believe in that.
If you want it to be about what you do as opposed to what you oppose. But I'm with you, and I know you believe in it, and you've lived it your whole public life. Joe Manchin, thank you very much, brother. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, my friend. Okay, take care, Chris. Bye-bye.
Be well. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. So the president said in 60 Minutes interview last night, this is why I really believe he should do a sit-down with NewsNation. It doesn't have to be with me, but he's got to be tested, okay? You know, he was just saying things, I don't know who I gave a pardon to. Oh, and then the interviewer explains who the guy, like he doesn't know who he gave the pardon to. But he also said last night, Democrats' shutdown strategy is losing because they think they have leverage over Republicans that they don't actually have. Is that true? What do the numbers tell us? What does common sense tell us? The man leading the Rocha revolution, Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. I'm a big fan. You'll see why next. Oh, Movember. Don't forget, Dusty will put up the code when we come back. I'm embarrassing myself so we can all get together and do something for men's health. Look, there's no question that the president got to say whatever he wanted on 60 Minutes last night. So much for that show. But is he right about any of this? The Democrats are keeping the shutdown going. That is true. They believe that the pain it is causing is purposeful. Are they right? The Republicans believe the same thing. So what do the numbers show, and what are the politics of this situation? Joining me is the host of the Rocha Revolution, Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you for being here.
Now, look, I can show you polls either way, but, you know, the idea of what I was talking to Joe about, the real dirty secret, Chuck, is the reason that healthcare is going the way it is because we're letting the companies take the profits and increase the costs, and we're giving them subsidies at the same time. And, you know, even Bernie Sanders talking about the corporate and the 1%, they never do anything about it. You know, isn't that the boogeyman, or is there leverage in this shutdown I'm missing?
I think you're right on. And I heard you saying earlier, you got your ACA bill just like I did. And I'm fortunate enough, I don't get any subsidies, but I'll tell you this, the first thing that I look at, the first thing that my mama will look at, the first thing that lots of voters look at is, what am I paying? It's highlighted right there in the third sentence. And the second thing is, how much is it going up? And to your point, Chris, it keeps going up. And we've been talking about this. I was in Tennessee this weekend, and I was talking to this old boy, and he was talking about how much food has been going up. Then he talked about how his wife is on government assistance with SNAP, and how the groceries now cover about 2 weeks, and it used to cover 4 weeks. All of this to be saying that everything's going up, and that's where the Democrats think it's a political risk for them, that them drawing a line in the sand is good for them. Republicans think it's good for them. Here's the crux of it, and you and the good ex-senator just kind of got at it a while ago. None of these folks think that they have anything at risk because none of them are in marginal seats where they have any chance of getting beat in a general election. The only way 400 of these 435 congresspeople could ever get beat is somebody from their own party running against them in the primaries, because we've let these state legislators draw these lines. Democrats and Republicans are both guilty of this, to where nobody really has any opposition in the general election, so they're just feeding their base. Republicans saying, see, I'm standing up with them Democrats, and Democrats going, see there, we're drawing a line this time. We're going to take on Donald Trump.
So what do you think breaks it? You know, when you look at the no kings, to me, I see reaction formation to MAGA. I mean, I even see it in, you know, who's leading, you know, the frustration that people in the media had. Oh, why aren't the negatives on Trump resonating? Why aren't the negatives now on the people who are the mascots of the reaction formation? Why aren't the negatives sticking? It's because the movement is bigger than the individual. Is that what you think the change agent here is? Is that what the Democrats are playing to? Is this left flank fringe move?
That's part of it. And part of it is the Democratic brand is broken. Donald Trump has broken Democrats so bad that when they say that they're fighting, the American people in focus groups and polling that I do every day, and I'm working in Virginia and New Jersey in these upcoming elections tomorrow, is that they need to rebuild that. Now, they think it's a political chance, and it may work, that them fighting back and shutting down the government works. You asked me the question, though, when does it end? I think it ends pretty quickly after these elections tomorrow because of a couple things. Democrats don't want folks going without food stamps for a long period of time. Let Social Security checks stop showing up for people like my mama, who that's the only income she has. And then you've already got the Democrats after tomorrow being able to say that this is the longest shutdown ever. And I think you're going to see an end coming up. Plus, there's folks in the House negotiating what this would look like if they came back into session with what they would do with middle ground on this health care that you and Senator Manchin were just talking about.
Here's my question, Chuck, in terms of why do Democrats say to me, no, this is about the Speaker of the House. This is about the Republicans and what they did in the big, beautiful bill. And this is about them wanting to let these subsidies expire and then pretending that we put the date on the expiration. So we wanted them to expire, too. And that was just what we had to do in the reconciliation process. But why don't they just own the fact that you did shut it down? This is about Democrats in the Senate. But for the Democrats buster, you wouldn't have shut down the government. Why can't Democrats admit that?
There's a great answer for that. It don't make it right or wrong. It's just what actually is happening. Remember the last time we went through this and Chuck Schumer went and got 7 other Democrats to vote with him to keep it open? He got massacred. Again, remember what I said about these districts not being competitive and you just making sure that your base is happy. There's the reason why the Democratic brand now is only at about 27% popularity is because the base is angry that they don't feel. Now, there can be some arguing about this, but that they don't feel like Democrats are fighting hard enough against all the things that Donald Trump is doing, from giving relief to Argentina to tearing down the White House till whatever he's talking about last night on 60 Minutes. You see that's why exactly why we're in the position we are today. Democrats are trying to build back some credibility with their own base so they can win tomorrow and in the midterms.
But don't you see that Trump sucks, the administration sucks, got you here, not where you want to be, and that the people that you're with, you know, look, I think one of the reasons that your content is so valuable is that you're obviously still connected to the hoi polloi and not just the hoity-toity. And when you're around real people, not living on Twitter, they want solutions, Chuck. They don't want to know which one of the two is worse. They're desperate for better.
I've been trying to explain to Democrats for years that you can be against Donald Trump and you should highlight the things that he's done that hurt working families while at the same time, and this is the piece we miss, giving your vision about how to make their lives better and then actually delivering on that. We've been talking about that for years, but we haven't been able to deliver. And then Donald Trump comes up and he's an anomaly, and we don't know how to deal with somebody who fights outside of the box because we're used to being inside the box where the lawyers say you have to fight. And Donald Trump has thrown all of that out. But there is an opportunity now. Donald Trump won't be here forever. You could say some of his policies will be, but Democrats need to get their hands dirty again. They need to get scuffed up again and win back that credibility and say what you're for and what your vision is, and then deliver if you want to win an election.
Go after the corporate subsidies for health care, because if they're allowing the costs to go up while their subsidies are going up and their stock prices are going up, something's out of whack. And it's not as simple as Bernie bashing the wealthy. See, the mistake I believe they make, and look, I was one of the first boosters of Bernie Sanders to get into the presidential conversation because I thought there was a place for his populist message, and I was right, and I was glad he was there. But AOC, Bernie, they're bad, the wealth is bad, the rich tax the rich, they're bad, they're bad. All right, do something about it. And this is the issue. The issue is not the ACA subsidies. They're a small slice of the overall budget, of the Medicaid budget. The big ticket is the corporate money, and I think they don't want to go after it because they want the money from the lobbyists.
I think you're onto something really, really important there. And there's a lot of people who feel that way every single day. It's okay, listen to me, Democrats, to say and be against folks who we feel like, working folks, are getting over on us, which could be these millionaires and billionaires, and a lot of them do. But you can do that while still being aspirational to people who want to be wealthy. Folks don't want to be poor the rest of their life. They don't want to be middle class. They want to be upper class. They don't want to be lower class. They want to be, everybody's aspirational. And sometimes we get a little too preachy and talk down to people like, it's okay, we're going to be okay, I'm going to take care of you. And no, just give me the break so I can be rich, and that's okay.
Rocha, thank you very much for being with me. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, my man, I'll talk to you soon. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Air traffic controllers. Kind of like the first wave of casualties here, right? It was them, and then it was the military, now it's the poor. They're not being paid. When does this go bad, by the way? We saw a couple of near misses, one of them right here at LaGuardia Airport. 2 planes clipped tails on the runway. Was this about that, or did it have nothing to do with it? You know, what is the gain versus the strain here? The president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association knows the deal. Joins us next.
We will slow traffic down. You'll see delays. We'll have flights canceled to make sure the system is safe. But we have to be honest, when we have controllers where we have shortages in towers and TRACONs doing 2 jobs, does it add more risk into the system? Sure it does.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy saying this weekend they're doing everything they can given the stress that air traffic controllers are under, and they're not getting paid. And they were in a jam before this shutdown. So the weekend was the worst air traffic control staffing shortage since the shutdown began. More than 10,000 flights were delayed. Hundreds were canceled. Now, before the shutdown, you only had about 5% of delays were caused by staffing issues. It was a thing, but not like what it is now. Now it's more than 80%. This past week, we saw a couple of near misses. I don't know if they were accountable or attributable to the staffing, but we had a Southwest Airlines flight heading to San Antonio, had to conduct an emergency maneuver to avoid colliding with another plane. Friday night, a United Airlines plane clipped another United Airlines plane at LaGuardia Airport on the tarmac. Let's bring in the risk and the reality here. The president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association is Nick Daniels. Nick, you have an ally here. Everybody knows that you had problems before this, let alone now. But the incidents we saw, do you believe that that is a function of shutdown pay and staffing problems?
Good evening. Thanks for having me. We've dealt with these issues for quite some time. The amazing men and women go to work and they have to be 100% of the time. While the shutdown's adding stress, they're still showing up and they're doing the amazing job of being the professionals they are. And the reasons that you hear of a near incident or a near miss is because they're taking action in ensuring that these aircraft in no way, hit or are in any kind of danger. So it's hats off to the air traffic controllers for being able to deal with this kind of stress during these very uncertain times.
I get it, but why do you think the incidents happened?
We've dealt with incidents every day in the system. The ones that you spoke of, like at LaGuardia, we weren't even talking to those aircraft, but when they go back and look at tapes, there's places that we can improve, things that we learn it from. That is aviation safety, is taking an event, breaking it down. That's why we have the NTSB that goes over, reviews it as well as an independent agency. And this is what air traffic controllers do. We perfect our craft every day, but we're doing it while short-staffed. We have only 10,800 certified controllers where there should be 14,633. And now, during this shutdown, we're seeing air traffic controllers begin to resign. That's new. We're less controllers than we were in 2019. We went through a 35-day shutdown. So you add that on top of the unreliable equipment. You add in people starting to resign over this to go and find different jobs instead of being in this amazing career and profession. It's absolutely going to increase, as the Secretary Duffy said, the risk in the system. And our job is to mitigate that risk, slow down the planes, and put everybody in a safe place.
So one of the people in your world flagged something for me. The 2019 shutdown, we actually have 400 less air traffic controllers working than we did 6 years ago. And I said, so those are efficiencies, right? You have better equipment and stuff like that? And he said, no. So we don't have better anything. We just have less people, and something is going to happen at some point because there's just too much to control. How real is the concern?
The concern is real, and it's growing, and that's why Secretary Duffy, myself, we share the same vision. We've been working with Administrator Bedford to actually move this system forward for once, make the true investment that was needed. Congress showed up, put a $12.5 billion investment where we probably need about $31.5 billion to actually bring this system up to standards. But this is what air traffic controllers have been saying time and time again for over a year. Our union specifically has been advocating for a decade for fixes to staffing and fixes to equipment. We have an information display system at facilities that still runs off a floppy disk right now. And when we have an emergency and we need to go and access a computer that's run by a floppy disk, there's no way to run a gold standard system or in any way give an air traffic controller the best equipment that's needed to handle the different variables that they deal with day in and day out.
Nick, I appreciate you very much. Thank the men and women for the job they're doing. And I'm not responsible for it, but I'm sure sorry about it. I'm sorry that they're having to do the job, not getting paid and short-staffed, just so that one party can make a point about the other. Thank you very much for joining us.
This burden shouldn't be on them, and thank you for helping us tell the story. We truly appreciate it.
All right, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Up next, the president says it's the judges that are keeping ICE raids from going as far as he would like them to when rounding up migrants. You see what happened in Illinois over the weekend? There's a guy dragged out of his car, punched in the face by an agent. Are these the kinds of stops that make sense for people who entered illegally, no matter what else is involved? I want to ask Trump's border chief about what kind of enforcement we want in America. Next. How do you get the people out? Okay, and is what you just saw there in Evanston, Illinois this past weekend going far enough or too far? Take a look. Now, as I've told you guys many times, I've spent a lot of time with CBP and not as much with ICE, but I've always been impressed by the men and women who do the job. But how they do the job matters. And especially, look, if those guys were making meth or selling fentanyl, you know, they're gangbangers, they're bad hombres, as the president says, you got a different feel from me, not as a lawyer, but as a citizen. But I have questions for the Border Patrol Chief, Michael Banks. I respect the job he's doing. I'm happy to have him on the show. Michael, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate having you, Chief.
Thank you for having me on, Chris.
Look, I mean, you know, I believe in the transparency of, I think that uniquely the CBP officers, so many of them have a lived experience, especially on the southern border, that gives them an empathy for the people that they have to police coming across, and they've been put in a horrible position because of the rules that need to be changed that haven't been done. So let's put all that to the side, because I'm not an enemy to the men and women. The look is terrible. And one thing that has to happen is we need the data to prove what Tom Homan and everybody else tells me, Chief, which is, yeah, but 70% of who we're getting are bad hombres, and the other 30% are just around them, and we can't let them go. I don't see those numbers. You don't put out those numbers. You're not in charge of doing that. But don't you think people should see what they're being told?
So absolutely, you know, this administration has been one of the most transparent administrations I've worked for in my career. I can't speak for ICE, but I can tell you that the United States Border Patrol has several thousand agents working alongside of ICE. We continue to support ICE, and we're going to continue to support ICE on the interior mission. And I'll tell you why it's important for us on the interior mission. The interior mission sends a message that if you get past the Border Patrol and make it into the interior, if you're still here illegally, there will still be a consequence provided. That in itself has provided a huge deterrence. And numbers I can share with you are those continual decreases we see every time there's another mission somewhere on the interior. But as far as professionalism, my Border Patrol agents are going to be absolutely professional. They're going to behave within the law. But what you don't see in that video clip is the records on this individual, what this individual is doing, the damage that's to the front of his vehicle where he rammed the agents, in this case, the Border Patrol agents that were out assisting ICE, where he had behaved in an assaultive manner. And then the fact that once they were making the arrest, he continued to resist and continued to fight. And so I think a lot of that's brought on by rhetoric. It's brought on by really just irresponsible leadership in certain cities where they go out and they put out rhetoric and they tell half the story instead of putting the whole story out there. But as far as transparency, absolutely. Here at CBP with the Border Patrol, we are as transparent as we've ever been, and we enjoy sharing our numbers. And when we aren't doing something right, we're going to adjust it and we're going to correct it and we're going to hold everyone accountable.
Have you put out the information on this guy that we see in this clip that you seem familiar with?
So very familiar with it. It's an ongoing investigation. But what I will tell you is that once all of the information is put out, as far as the camera angles, most of America is going to understand why the agent used the force that he needed to use.
But Chief, if you know that now, why are we looking at the clip out of context? Why hasn't the government put out? I know it's an ongoing investigation, but we both know, all due respect, you guys put out what you want when you want, okay? But so why don't you put out what made this guy worth this kind of force?
And so I think, like I said earlier, if you can tell by the front of his vehicle, he rammed the agents, which is an assault. He used his vehicle as a deadly weapon, and then he continued to resist arrest. The additional information is the different actions that were taken during that resisting. But there's a difference. We talk about arresting an illegal immigrant and how far is too far. This is a person who assaulted those agents on the ground, who assaulted them with a deadly weapon and used his vehicle as such, and they took the appropriate force necessary to effect that arrest.
Look, I got it. And I just think the more information there is, the better. Again, I'm not here to demonize the men and the women, but there's a reason that people are angry. Now, part of that is rhetoric. Part of that is politics. Part of that is agendas. No question about it. But let me ask you, on a philosophical level, Chief, do you believe that everyone who enters this country illegally is the same in terms of a threat profile?
So absolutely not. There are different threats that come across this country. I believe that everyone who enters this country illegally is in this country illegally, and they should be apprehended. They should be prosecuted for that crime they committed and returned back to their country. I believe it's absolutely unfair to the millions of legal immigrants that come to this country to make this country a better place and do it the proper way. You talked about immigration reform. That needs to be fixed. But I equate this. You know, and I'm an old sailor. I spent a lot of time in the military, in the Navy before I came in BP. And there's an old saying, dead in the water. And it's when a boat is stuck out at sea and it's not operating and the boat is just floating. You know, our immigration system has two processes. And I'm going to use this boat analogy. You've got the engine and you've got a hole in the boat. The United States Border Patrol's job is to plug that hole, shore up that hole, and ensure that those coming across the border are doing so legally, right? And then that is Congress and his job to fix the engine part of that, which is addressing the need for fixing the immigration system. And I will tell you that I'm very proud of the men and women of the Border Patrol. In 9 short months, we've had phenomenal success. We've seen a decrease that is post-1970 error numbers. We've seen the largest decrease in the history of illegal immigration. We're down 83% in cross-border activity. I think the biggest point we need to talk about is for years, they talked about how our current immigration policies are inhumane. Our current enforcement posture is inhumane. Our deaths, cross-border deaths, down 75%, right? This is the most humane border we've had because people aren't putting their lives in the hands of smugglers to be smuggled into the country, handing over their babies to unknown individuals to be smuggled into the country. And so I can tell you right now, our deaths are at record lows, and that's humanity on the border.
Well, look, you got less people coming. And so you're going to have less of all the statistics that go along with the passage, right? You know, you talk about sending a message. Now, Chief, this isn't really your category, but again, because you know the situation so well, I wonder if you went after the people who coax them to come, who help pay the smugglers, who hire them when they come. I wonder if that would make a difference. That's not your area, so I'll leave it for somebody else. But I want to thank you for being on, Chief, and you're always welcome here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
Take care. Border Patrol Chief Michael Banks. We'll be right back. It's all about Movember. Give so I can shave. Leland Vittert, right now.
How much do we have to give?
10 grand in your case.
Not worth it. Thank you very much. Yeah, you see, there you go. We continue to tomorrow. I will see you back here in New York City, my friend.